A little while ago I did a video about planing some green wood, some oak split out of the log for joint stool. And in that video I said you're not going to learn very much because this wood is so perfect that there was next to nothing to do to it. So now I have some really good oak that isn't perfect, and I'll be able to show you how to approach a couple different problems that can come up. What I'm making are rails for this cupboard I'm building, and they're very wide. They finish at 7.5 inches wide, and this is about 20 inches long. In the finished cupboard there'll be one edge that has a mortise in it for a muntin and panels, and the other edge is the bottom of the cupboard, and there'll just be a molding laying over it. So this one I just finished planing, and this is the other half that of the piece I split out to make these two. And it has a couple of problems. You might be able to see that it is swept. It has a bit of a bow, so that when I throw a straight edge on here, it's hollow. Or the converse is you flip it over there and it's got a big hump in it. And another problem that it has, maybe tied to that bow or not, is it's twisted. So this corner and that corner are high when I sight down it. And so I'll show you how to cope with all of that. There's a few things that I need to keep track of as I'm working. I don't want to lose the thickness on one edge. These are, not so much on that. They're pie-shaped because of the way I'm splitting the log apart. And I don't need that full thickness on both edges. I only need it up where the joinery is going to happen. Nothing is going to happen in that bottom edge. So this will go in that orientation in the finished cupboard. So that's a benefit in that I don't have to maintain that full thickness. But you do want to keep your wits about you out on this edge, which is near where the sapwood and bark was. That's the thick edge. And I'll just show you how I go about processing this, and it will begin out at the chopping block with a hatchet. All right, I'll start with the hatchet to just try to get most of that twist out of. I'm on the hollow side of that bow. You'll hear a little traffic and wind stuff. It's kind of a funny day here. So what I'm doing is sighting down from this edge right here, and I see that high corner. So that's where I'm going to concentrate my hewing right there. And I'll just set up like that. So taking those strokes very close together to break up those fibers like that, and then bringing the hatchet right down to break those off. And so now that end and this end agree pretty well, but I've put a bit of a drop in it right here. So I'll try to take off light cuts to sort of blend those two. And I didn't talk about the tool, but I did in a previous video, and these hatchets are single bevel, and maybe 7 inches this way, and just excel at making flat surface. So I'm pretty much there. Now I'm just trying to catch right there and carry that down through like that. And I think that might be enough. This is that opposite corner down there, and I'll just take a shaving or two like that. And I'll put it on the bench in the shop and you can see the result. It's way, way better than it was. But now this side is that bump, so it won't sit on the bench all that well. So I'll just try to take a little right out of the middle of that. Kind of carried away. Now, one more thing with the axe. When I split off the sapwood, part of it remained right down there. And that line, I would like to follow the growth rate of the tree. These fibers are so straight in this particular tree that it's worthwhile to trim that down. And if I position this way, you can see what's happening. I'm coming at an angle like that. And now, coming more with the hatchet, more up against the piece of wood. Go back inside and get it finished up. All right, now I can start planing it. One thing, well, in the hewing, I seem to take care of the twist. You can see by that updated winding stick shot that it's pretty flat compared to, each end is flat compared to the other. One piece I didn't really get out is the cupping or the bowing, but that's easy enough to just by taking down each end and it'll flatten out in just a few strokes. One of the things to be concerned about is putting some of that twist back, which isn't hard to do, and you of course don't want to do it. So I'll start with the scrub plane, and that will clean up some of that rough stuff from the hatchet. And I'm just concentrating on about that last 3 inches. Keeping in mind I want to take out that hollow middle. So I need to be aware of that twist. Like I said, I don't want to put it back, and I'm okay so far. And now I should have diminished that sort of cavity in the middle just by addressing those two ends. So at this point, you see that it rocks a little on the bench sometimes. If that's a bother, you can just shim it with some stuff that's hanging around. And I'll go to a smoothing plane. So instead of the curved iron of the scrub plane, a straighter line, maybe set a little too deep there. And do the same thing I did with the scrub plane, go at each end. now I'll try to take some full-length shavings. And you can hear it bumping around. It's that. Now I have sunlight coming in to make things a little harder for you to see. Let me block that up. Much as I hate to. It's just harder on the camera. So at that stage, I can now, now it's a lot flatter this way before I go too far. I'll double check this again, and that's still good. And I don't know if this plane's set up. Is maybe a little heavy. Or maybe a little light. Oh yeah. So, what I do, sometimes I'll just put my fingers there so the blade won't come too far, and just give it a tap and then knock the wedge a bit, and repeat that. And that's a very fine shaving. So if you need to shim it, and you have a wedge-shaped shim, it can fit a little greater variety of situations. Now, let's see. So I'm starting to hit more places now. I've got a hollow in here still. And when I'm doing this, I'm skewing the plane a bit, like that. That's getting a lot better. Still some hatchet marks in there. And stop frequently to check your results. Yeah, I'm starting to get a high corner now at my far right up there. So concentrate some of that work up there. Oops, there goes my shim. It's better, but it's not completely gone yet. And Sometimes you can see it by eye. I'm almost past those hatchet marks. It's nice and flat this way. And you can see that, you can feel it. There's a little slack in the middle where you can feel the ruler is bearing down at the ends. But it's pretty good. Shim doesn't want to stick put. So you see what I'm trying to do there is take full length shavings, and those will get me the results I'm after. So that surface is good enough for me for now. This piece is sopping wet. And what I'm going to do is get it planed today, trim the edges, cut the length, and I'll mark the date on it. And I'll come back in a month or more and just skim it then with the plane when the surface will be a bit drier. And it won't get as much tear out, and it'll clean up any irregularities that are here right now. And also a chance to rectify any distortion that comes from drying, which should be minimal. So next I'll show you how to trim the edge of it. To plane the edge of a short but wide piece is a little bit tricky. If I put it up here on the bench top, I'm up really high trying to get at it. So I tend to grab it down in this device here. Just a wooden screw in a bracket there. This one, you see it's a little bit bent. When I was building the shop, I fell out of the loft and hit it, and I've never remounted it. I don't frequently use it, but sometimes it comes in handy. And I've got a sliding dead man here. Why it's called a dead man, I have no idea. And so I'll put a peg on that dead man, try to get that near the end of the board, and then this screw isn't really enough to hold that down. I can push down there, so I tend to keep a hold fast right there and give that a little knock. And so now piece is trapped here on edge, and I can then just usually go right to the jointer plane with it. And you want to check it to see that it's straight. I'm running off the end a little bit. You saw me take extra strokes down here to try to rectify that. That's usually my MO, is I dive off the end. You can switch over to a shorter plane for some of that localized work, like that, which didn't help at all. The piece is wider right now than I need it, but not infinitely so. And it's longer too. That's a heavy shaving for that cut. I'm going to quit there, I think, but I'll check it too with the square. And And that looks okay. It's a little bit tilted over up here, but I don't want to address too much of that. So then the next step is to mark my width and do the same thing to that edge. You don't need to see that. And at that stage, I'll deal with the thickness. Now it's pretty simple thing of marking out the width, the thickness I want. And I would like it 1.1 or more. That's 1.1. Down at this end, it's just over 1.5 inches, so it isn't way out of whack. And you can do this with a marking gauge. You can do it with a chalk line, a pencil, and a ruler like I'm doing right here. And I'm using that just so you can see it. So there's not that much to take off. And I would, depending on how much wood there is to remove, I might use the hatchet, use a scrub plane. One of the benefits of removing that stock, you see it isn't really a lot, I could leave it, but the benefit of removing it is that it will facilitate drying. The thinner it is, the easier it'll be to dry. The thicker it is, the slower it is to dry. This is not a huge difference, but I will take it down, and you can see the difference here, where I've made that flat surface, and here's that pie shape from my original riving. But that'll just be hatchet work, so you saw how that goes. And then, like I said, just I'll trim the ends and write on them the date, and sticker it in a pile here, and go on to make the next one.